It's Sunday morning in Kuala Lumpur. And as usual, there's live coverage of aerobics from the capital. Except today, it's a special broadcast. Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad is launching a new model of the national car. With export sales booming, the success of the car is the story of Malaysia's success. Success against all odds. After more than a century of colonial presence, Britain's withdrawal in the 1950s left a legacy of competing races, differing religions, and disconnected territories. From the beginning, Malaysia struggled with civil strife. To unite this country meant restructuring on a scale rarely seen. The result has been economic growth on a scale rarely matched. In 20 years, Malaysia has lifted exports almost to Australian levels, but with a fraction of our deficit or foreign debt. And the Prime Minister has plans for even faster growth. He calls it Vision 2020. By the year 2020, the plan is for Malaysia to be fully industrialised, efficient, highly educated, and incredibly for a region teeming with people, to quadruple its population of 17 million. For Omar Tambi, who runs a vast rubber and oil palm plantation, Malaysia's modernisation could prove ruinous.
Many of our workers have left. They are migrating to the cities to work in factories and businesses. The cities are more exciting. They can work in air conditioning and wear nice clothes. What can my plantation offer them?
The demand for labour has led a young Muslim woman, Rahani, to become the country's most outspoken union activist.
Kami ni dari pusat pelindung wanita. Kata lain ni kita ingat nak pakai apa-apa kan? Nanti kita kena tahu itu hak-hak kita sebagai pekerja. Tu yang ni apa-apa hal telefonlah nombor saya dulu kat kerja HP berapa tu? Tapi jadi mula kerja HP dari tahun berapa? Tahun 78. Oh 78. Nak buat apa ni rencana?
Rahani is especially concerned about the role of women in the new Malaysia and the exploitation of women in a workforce hungry for labour. Paul Lowe runs one of Malaysia's top companies. Like most other top businessmen here, he's Chinese. But he's Malaysian first and well aware how the indigenous Malays envy the success of the Chinese.
One of the most important things in my life is to contribute in a good way to the development of Malaysia. Especially, I would like to bring more unity among the races. We must have a shared destiny.
Paul Lowe is not just talk. He's trying to set up a business school that will help reduce ethnic tensions.
I've never heard of Vision 2020.
Sibin is a member of the Muruts, a tribe once famed and feared for their skills with blowpipes. And for them, development means impossible choices. In the past, the Muruts' villages were occasional clearings amid the tangle of dense rainforest in a land called Borneo. Now, northern Borneo is called Sabah, and life for the Muruts is changing quickly. As they prepare for a ceremonial welcome for the official who will bring the new Vision 2020 plans to the village, Sibin and his friends have many fears and unanswered questions. For them, Vision 2020 holds many uncertainties. Despite difficulties, the success of the Malaysian government's economic policies has been spectacular. Over the last 10 years, the country's economy has had an annual growth between 5 and 8%. Now the man behind those policies wants even faster growth.
Announcing the arrival of His Honorable Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Dr. Mahathir Mohamad.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 3 decades, the nation's energies will be concentrated on trying to realize Vision 2020. We were able to make tangible progress. Our political stability and economic growth have been the envy and aspirational model for many countries. In the past, we have had our share of ethnic and religious conflicts. Once we came close to catastrophe. If we can help it, we do not want to walk through these dark passages again. Hence our limits on certain activities. Even if this is perceived as infringements of human rights, particularly by some foreign quarters, we apologize to nobody.
There is still tension in Malaysia's melting pot of races and religions. Muslim Malays make up half the population, Chinese 30%, non-Muslim indigenous Dayaks 9%, and Indians 8%. In its bid to stop conflicts arising, the government's policies have frequently been seen as repressive. Curbs on press freedoms, the judiciary and political and social activists are commonplace. Many Malaysians, though, see that as a fair trade for government successes in reducing poverty and the economic power of the Chinese. Like many Chinese, Paul Lowe is about to take his family back to his parents' home to celebrate Chinese New Year with family and friends. His fine home and expensive car are clear statements of his success in business. Yet, like many others of his generation, Paul Lowe is only too well aware that life for the Chinese in Malaysia has not always been so comfortable.
For 4 days now, bloody chaos in the streets of Kuala Lumpur. So far, 200 dead, mostly Chinese.
I was in Australia as a student in 1969, so I saw it on TV. It's almost unbelievable that such a thing could happen. It's a shock to us, especially my generation. We don't have any inclination of going back to China. If this place becomes hostile to Chinese, then I don't think where we can go.
The spectre of the 1969 riots still haunts Malaysia. It's a key to understanding the urgency, almost desperation of the government's drive to achieve economic equality between the Chinese and native Malays. And it's a key to understanding why Chinese like Paul Lowe have gone along with the enforced business rules designed to make that happen. Paul Lowe's father had a shop house and worked hard and long to build a future for his children.
Whenever someone asks my father, what do you do with all the savings? You're working so hard. And he always says, well, my savings are in my children, my investments are my children, and if my children are successful, that's enough for me.
Hey, why was 6 afraid of 7?
Yeah.
Because 6 is smaller than 7?
No.
Then?
7, 8, 9. You get 7, 8, 9. 7, 8 up 9.
Paul Lowe, with his Australian education and English-speaking children, is a man caught in the crossfire of the cultural changes taking place in Asia. His family clings to the Chinese traditions that have been passed down through centuries. But there's a weather eye to the realities of living in multiracial Malaysia. Only here does Chinese New Year include a mohiba, a goodwill dinner where Chinese families invite Indian and Malay neighbours to share the celebration. For Paul Lowe and his friends, Malaysia is home. Many have never even set foot in China. But it's their hard-won wealth and cultural traditions that still set them apart. Although the Chinese make up less than a third of Malaysia's population, like elsewhere in Southeast Asia, they have a disproportionate amount of the wealth. This has created the conflict and prejudice that so concerns Paul Lowe.
The Chinese are so successful because of the hardships they face in China. Hence, they are prepared to work under any conditions to succeed. The Chinese are considered rather self-centered, selfish, and do not wish to share business opportunities.
It is the riches of Malaysia's rural economy that have financed its leap into becoming a manufacturing nation. As well as palm oil and tin, Malaysia is a huge exporter of food and raw timber. But larger than all these is rubber, and Malaysia is the world's biggest supplier. But as manufacturing increases, so too do Omar's problems. Unless he can find a way to stop his labourers leaving for the factories, his struggle to survive will become even more difficult. It's a bitter irony that Omar could become a victim of the very policies the government introduced to help he and other native Malays make it in the world of business.
I enjoy the plantation. It's peaceful and quiet. It's been my way of life for over 20 years.
But what is peaceful for Omar is boredom for many of the villagers that make up the bulk of his workforce. For them, the pull of the cities is all too strong. When the British established the rubber industry here, the nearby town of Malacca, where Omar's parents live, was a jewel in the crown of the empire. And it was the British who left a legacy here of three races, divided and unequal. The Chinese, mostly brought to work the tin mines, but who quickly turned to commerce and almost as quickly built fortunes. Indians, brought to tap rubber, a job that a good number of them still do today. And the Malays, the natives of this country, many of whom stayed in their villages and lived by farming. Omar's family is Malay. They're Bumiputras, meaning sons of the soil. Most